Now, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry, who arrived in the country this morning on an official visit, held several discussions with a number of high-ranking officials in the country today. Incidentally, it is after a lapse of 43 years that a U.S. Secretary of State arrived in the country.
The last time a U.S. Secretary of State visited Sri Lanka was in 1972, which saw the arrival of William Pierce Rogers. Although Secretary of State Colin Powell visited Sri Lanka in 2005, it was not considered as an official visit. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry, who arrived in Sri Lanka today, was once a U.S. presidential election candidate. He is the 68th United States Secretary of State. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry met Sri Lankan President Maithripala Sirisena and engaged in discussion this morning. John Kerry had inquired into Sri Lanka's friendship with China and India. President Sirisena had said that with regard to foreign relations, he follows a central non-aligned program. The U.S. Secretary of State had also agreed to the request made by President Sirisena to provide training to the officers attached to the Criminal Investigation Department and the Commission to investigate allegations of bribery and corruption to curtail corruption. John Kerry had also agreed to the requests made by the President to support Sri Lanka's efforts to locate the money hidden away by certain Sri Lankans in foreign banks. John Kerry had gone on to say that positive environment in Sri Lanka will attribute to the recommendations that will be presented to U.S. President Barack Obama on his Asian tour for next year, so he may also visit Sri Lanka. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry also held a discussion with Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe at Temple Trees. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry, who arrived at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, made a joint statement with Mangala Samaraweera, the Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Today we talked about the enormous progress that Sri Lanka has made in just a few short months, and progress that can be measured, progress on restoring democratic institutions, progress on creating more accountable governance, the passage of the 19th Amendment in which the President kept his promise to reduce powers of the presidency and move them more to the people through a broader sharing, is an example of that. Progress in combating corruption, and progress on reconciliation that can lead to a much more enduring peace and to shared prosperity for all Sri Lankans. So many people are suffering in Nepal from the devastating earthquake that struck 1 week ago. And I want to commend the government and the people of Sri Lanka for quickly sending response teams to Kathmandu. Many challenges and difficult decisions obviously still lie ahead, and we talked about many of them this morning. But one thing that struck me was the readiness of this government to open its doors and to open its minds to different ideas and to new and more effective and efficient ways of doing things. One thing about this Sri Lankan government seems very clear. The President, the Prime Minister, and the Foreign Minister are not afraid of tackling tough issues. They're willing to make difficult decisions, and they are committed to keeping their promises. We've seen that with the 100-day plan. And as the government heads into the parliamentary elections this summer, Sri Lankans will continue to rely on their tremendous leadership and commitment. So I am here today because I want to say to the people of Sri Lanka that in this journey to restore your democracy, the American people will stand with you. We intend to broaden and to deepen our partnership with you. And we will soon have members of that team from the Treasury Department and from the Commerce Department come here in order to work with the government on the economic measures that can be taken to provide for greater investment and greater growth.
Today, Sri Lanka is well on its way to becoming a fully fledged parliamentary democracy, laying the foundation for a new Sri Lanka built on the pillars of democracy and ethnic harmony. This will allow us to reap the fruits of increased economic growth and prosperity, which have been eluding us for nearly 2 decades because of the ethnic conflict. Ensuring accountability in the new Sri Lanka will feature as a key component of the reconciliation process, and the architecture of a domestic accountability mechanism with international technical assistance, as promised by our manifesto, are now being planned. In this context, there are also several areas where the United States can assist us by enhancing local capacity and providing technical expertise.
U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry also visited the historical Kalaniya Raja Mahabharya this afternoon.